Alright, so in this video we're going to learn how to factor a quadratic. And so where we get quadratic from, again, is this x squared term. So everything that we're going to be dealing with for a couple of days is going to have some number, and some number, okay, because a, b, and c are just numbers. And then you're going to have an x squared term, you're going to have an x term, and you're going to have just a number by itself. And so we're going to get really, really good at factoring problems that look like this. So to do those problems, you have to put together everything that we've been working on. So you have to put together factoring by grouping, you have to put together the t-chart, okay? So what you do first, step one is to multiply a times c. Okay, so you're going to multiply a times c, and again, here's your a, your b term, and your c term. So the a is always going to be the x squared term, b will always be the x term, and c will always be your number, okay? So first off, you're going to multiply those two. So you would get 5 times negative 24, and when you type that in, you would get negative 20 in your calculator, okay? So when you multiply a times c, this is when you're going to do your t-chart. Okay, now in your t-chart, a times c is going to go on that left side because we know product goes on the left, and then your b term is going to go on the right side of your t-chart, okay? So what that looks like is this negative 120, which was your a times c, is going to go there, and then your b term, which is negative 37, will go on the right side of your chart, okay? So again, a times c always goes on the left side, and then your b term is always going to go on that right side. T-chart set up, then you're going to complete the t-chart like normal, okay? So you're going to list all the factors that will give you a negative 120. So let's start with 2 times 60 is 120. If you divide 120 by 3, it would be 3 times 40. 4, I'm sure, goes into it, 4 times 30, okay? So you can keep going, but I actually see an answer right now. So again, when can you multiply and get a negative? The only time that can happen is when you've got a positive and a negative answer. So I need to make one of these negative to get to a negative 37. And I notice that 3 and 40 are pretty close to a 37 if I put a negative on one of them. So we can guess and check. If you put a negative on the 3, that would give you a positive 37. So that's not going to be it. So you're actually going to put the negative here, and so you would do 3 plus negative 40 equals negative 37. So your two answers, like how we did in the t-chart, would be 3 and negative 40, okay? So once you find your t-chart answers, step 2 is called bust up the b's. Okay, give it that cool fun term so you remember it. But what you're going to do is you're going to replace your factors with the b term. And do not forget that you're going to add variables. Okay, so let me talk about that. Here is my b term up here, negative 37. So what I'm going to do is I know that 3 and negative 40 are going to give me a negative 37. So it does not matter what order you do them in. You can write 3 here, and you can write negative 40 here, or you could rewrite them the other way. You would still get the same answer. But what you have to do is make sure you add variables to each of those middle terms, because to get a 37x, both of your numbers had to have an x term, okay? So then you're going to rewrite the problem for step 3. So you're going to bring down the first term and the last term. Okay, so I'm going to bring down this 5x squared, and I'm going to bring down that negative 24. So here is my problem. So I'm actually going to rewrite it down here so I've got more work. 5x squared and that was a positive 3x, a negative 40x, and a negative 24, okay? So the whole point of us doing the t-chart and finding two factors that give us this middle term is so that we can have four terms, because when you have four terms, you guys know you can factor by grouping. So this whole process is to make this 3-term problem go to a 4-term problem. Okay, so you guessed it, step 4 is going to be factor by grouping, which you guys are rock stars at. Okay, so again, when you factor by grouping, draw a line down the middle. You're going to find the GCF of these first two terms. A 5 and a 3 have got nothing in common besides a 1. And then out of x2 and x, you can take out an x. You will always be able to take out an x because your coefficient's going to start with a 2, and then it's going to go one letter of a variable. Okay, so now figure your parentheses. 5 divided by 1 is 5, x, and then plus 3. Once you've got that parenthesis, you're going to rewrite it. And you just need to do some division to find that last term. So divide those two numbers, and negative 24 divided by 3 is going to be a negative 8. I can double check it. Negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. So then my last step is to rewrite my final answer. I'm going to just make that x instead of 1x. So x minus 8, and then 5x plus 3. Okay? So your answer will always look like this when you're factoring a quadratic, okay? So if you start off with a squared term, an x, and a number, you're going to have a binomial times a binomial. In fact, you're going to have a linear binomial times a linear binomial always, okay? So this is how you factor a quadratic. This is actually called when a is not a 1. So we're going to learn a shortcut when a is a 1. But again, if you have a number in front of this x squared, you're going to have to do this very long process, okay? I understand it's hard, but you guys can do it. So let's actually learn a shortcut. So how is this problem different than what we just did? Notice that there is no number in front of this x squared. So these problems are called when your a is a 1, because if there's no number in front of that x squared, it's going to be a 1, okay? Let's do this the long way and see if we can come up with a shortcut. So first off, again, step 1 is to do your t-chart. So you're going to do a times c, and then you're going to have your b term on the right side. So 1 times 42 is 42, and then your b term is a negative 13, okay? So now we're going to do my t-chart. So when can I multiply and get a positive, but add to get a negative? Well, I know when that is when both of my factors are going to be negative. So I'm going to have to put 2 negatives on both of my numbers. So let's see, 2 times 21 is 42. Divide 42 by 3 and you would get 14. 5 does not go into 42, but 6 does. 6 times 7 is 42. And then I notice that 6 and a 7 are pretty close to a 13. But again, I've got to make them both negative, because 2 negatives will multiply to get me a positive 42. And they will also add to get me a negative 13. So here are my two factors, okay? So again, step 2 is to bust up the b's. So you're just going to replace these two terms for your b term. So again, order does not matter. You could write negative 6 here, or you could write negative 7. And again, don't forget to add your variables, since that 13 did have an x. Step 3, you're going to rewrite. Let's rewrite the problem. So again, you're going to bring down your first term, and you're going to bring down the last term, first and last term. Okay? Again, I always rewrite the problem down here so I've got more room. Okay? Again, step 4 is to factor by grouping. So once you've got 4 terms, you can start to factor by grouping. So again, there's a 1 here. 1 and 6 don't have anything in common except a 1. And then I can take out 1x as always. So I will be left with a 1x in the middle and then subtract 6. So again, I'm going to rewrite that parenthesis. 1x minus 6. I'm going to divide my last 2 numbers. So 42 divided by negative 6 is a negative 7. And then I will write my final answer as 1x minus 7 and 1x minus 6. Now actually, there is a more nice way to write that problem. That's the same as x minus 7, x minus 6. So you're not going to see this 1x in front of anything on a multiple choice test or anything, okay? So now what can we tell about our answer and our factors? So again, negative 6 and negative 7 were my factors that worked, but look, they're also in the parentheses. So, shortcut, you don't have to do any of this work, okay? None of this work had to happen. I'm going to erase it. We didn't have to do any of it because it's a shortcut. When can you use a shortcut? You can use a shortcut when a is a 1. So when there is no number in front of x squared, once you find your 2 factors, all you do, jump straight to the parentheses. You're going to have x and an x, and then you take your 2 factors that worked. So x minus 6, x minus 7. Okay? Again, great question is, these are the same answers. So x minus 7, x minus 6 is the same as x minus 6 times x minus 7. So again, order does not matter in these. But again, with the shortcut, you can use it only when a is a 1. So when you've got a number in front of x squared, then you're going to have to do all of this long way because it's not that easy. Okay. So that's how you factor quadratics. Again, you will always have a linear term and a binomial times a binomial. Okay. So to practice, there's a lovely iExcel. Also, if you don't like iExcel, there's paper practice galore, there's scavenger hunts, there's coloring activities, there's everything. So again, that's how you factor quadratics. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.